Starmer is facing pressure to increase defence spending to 3% of GDP. And to discuss that further, delighted to be joined by the former chair of the Defence Committee in Parliament, former Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, the Labour Party was a little bit cagey about its commitments to military spending during the election, but now Sir Keir Starmer will be going face-to-face with other NATO countries in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. I mean, you were just reporting earlier that attack that we saw in Kyiv by Russia on a children's hospital, the audacity in which Russia is able to persecute its war shows that NATO needs to do more. We all need to do more. Our world's getting more dangerous, not less. Russia is not losing. Ukraine is not winning. And these are the bigger questions that we need to ask ourselves. I've been calling for an increase in defence spending to 2.5%. I'm pleased that the Labour government will continue the support for Ukraine, but that is not enough. Our world is getting more dangerous. Europe's security is starting to diminish. Behind Russia sits China as well. These are the bigger questions that NATO needs to ask itself. How, in today's day and age, a country on the edge of Europe can be invaded, but this military alliance, the most potent military force in the world, cannot actually stand up and check Russia's behaviour.
Are you shamed that the Conservatives left the military in such a state? I mean, we're hearing from former heads of the British Army that we wouldn't last a one-month small war.
No, I think that's a rather provocative way of describing things. When we came into office, these threats simply weren't there. These threats are growing. They're present and they're evolving. We need to recognise we need to do more. Absolutely right. You expand your armed forces, your army, your navy, your air force, and indeed cyber capabilities, the grey zone, according to what's coming over the horizon. And what the head of the army, indeed what I've been saying, is threats are developing. Storm clouds are gathering. Now is the time to prepare. Not just us, but NATO as a whole. And because our economy and our security are symbiotically interconnected, if we want our economy to grow, if we want prosperity, we have to invest in security as well. So, yes, I want to see more spent on defence, but to say that somehow this is all the Conservatives' fault, that's too simplistic, I'm afraid.
Now, of course, there's some political stability in the United Kingdom, with a massive majority that will no doubt last at least 5 years. I'm thinking of those other major countries, those other major heads of government around that table in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. Biden, likely not long left in the presidency. Martin Schulz, 20 points behind in... Olaf Scholz, I should say, 20 points behind in the polls in Germany. Justin Trudeau, 20 points behind in the polls in Canada. Macron, of course, term limited in France as president. I mean, Britain should surely be taking a lead here.
I think you make two very powerful points. Firstly, it's in our DNA to step forward, perhaps when other nations hesitate. That's what we do. We did it a couple of times last century. That's why we've got a place at the UN Security Council, because of our international leadership, because of the statecraft that we normally present. But you also show the political turmoil that we're seeing across Europe. You could add to that the fact that Donald Trump has made it very clear he might want to actually retreat away from investment in security in Europe, which would be a huge mistake. Put it all together, and you can see that our adversaries, our competitors, will seek to take advantage of that, to see that we've become risk averse. We've had it relatively easy over the last 30 years, since the end of the Cold War. Well, those days are over. I stress again that we've entered a dangerous era of insecurity, and we need to up our game.
And Tobias Ellwood, what do you suspect a large Labour majority means for our policy in the Middle East?
Another good question. I mean, again, a great example here that you've not just got Europe, you've got the Middle East, and then you've got what China is doing in the South China Sea, but also questioning our global order, exploiting the weakness, if you like, in how our rules have operated for the last numbers of decades. Put this all together, and there's absolutely, firstly, a necessity to increase defence spending, but also statecraft, to cajole and encourage other nations to work together to defend what our values are. We showed that in the Red Sea. Do you remember when those ships were denied passage because of what the Houthis were doing? What sits behind the Houthis, indeed Hamas and Hezbollah, is Iran. There's no Iran strategy, there's no Russia strategy, and indeed there's no China strategy. A lot of questions for those gathering in Washington, D.C. at the NATO summit. to consider.
Well, Tobias Ellwood, former Conservative MP, former Defence Select Committee Chairman, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.